Lila thought she had Mason all to herself. His breath turned unsteady tension building between them. His fingers twitched slightly. A subtle reaction she felt immediately as she pressed closer, slower testing the moment, drawing it out. Just as she thought the night belonged to them, a deep voice from the doorway said, "Didn't think you'd start without us." Before we dive in, take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It's quick and helps the channel grow more than you know. Plus you won't miss the next story. Now let's begin. Lila didn't come here looking for trouble, but trouble found her. 5 men, Mason, Ethan, Noah, Caleb, and Jasper Rugged, built and carved from the wilderness itself, sat around a crackling fire outside the cabin next to hers. She had planned a solo escape, just her. The silence, and a chance to forget the mess she left behind. But the second she saw them, something shifted. She wasn't here to heal. She was here to feel, and she wanted them to feel her too. Lila stepped onto her porch, letting the night air kiss her bare skin as her robe slipped lower off one shoulder. She knew they saw her. She made sure of it. Mason, with broad shoulders and sharp, knowing eyes, set his drink down mid-conversation. His gaze trailed over her slow, low, and heavy. Ethan, Noah, Caleb, and Jasper followed. Good. She had their attention. She stretched her arms above her head, letting the soft silk of her robe fall open just a little more. The firelight flickered across her skin, highlighting every inch she let them see. A low murmur rippled through the group. Lila smiled, then turned to head inside, glancing over her shoulder to lock eyes with Mason. A silent invitation. A challenge. "Come and get me." Lila barely made it 2 steps inside before she heard Mason. The heavy thud of boots against her porch, the door swinging shut. Footsteps, slow, unhurried but deliberate. She didn't need to turn around to know he followed her. A thrill shot through her anticipation, tightening in her chest. She could feel him standing in the doorway, his presence filling the cabin like he belonged there. "You always tease strangers like that." Mason's voice was low, rough like gravel and heat. Lila smiled, reaching for the half-finished bottle of wine on the counter. "Only when they follow me inside." The door clicked shut. In an instant his heat was behind her, his breath warm against her shoulder, not touching yet but close enough to make her skin prickle. "Careful what you start," Mason murmured. "Might not stop." Lila tilted her head, exposing the curve of her neck. "Maybe I don't want you to." His hand found her waist firm, confident, no hesitation. He turned her to face him, and the second she looked up she knew this wasn't a game anymore. The teasing was over. Mason was here for her, and she wanted every second of it. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing, no holding back. The moment Lila reached for Mason, he met her with the same urgency, a silent understanding passing between them, heavy with heat. She barely made it to the edge of the bed before she pushed him down. Her pulse, racing anticipation thrumming beneath her skin. This wasn't careful. This wasn't sweet. This was raw, consuming, and exactly what she needed. Mason propped himself up on his elbows, watching her through hooded eyes, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Not wasting any time, huh?" Lila mirrored his smirk, the thrill of control sparking through her. "Not here to waste it." She traced along his skin, slow and deliberate, letting her fingers explore every firm line, every inch of warmth beneath her touch. His breathing shifted, a subtle catch in his throat, his body betraying how much he wanted this. A sharp inhale. Mason's stomach tensed. His fingers curled into the sheets, his breath coming in shorter bursts. He wasn't just watching her now. He was feeling everything. Lila let her touch linger, dragging her nails lightly over his skin, tracing the ridges of muscle beneath her fingertips. The tension in his body was unmistakable. His breath uneven, every movement betraying the growing ache inside him. She wanted him to feel it even more. Mason's fingers threaded through her hair, his touch lingering, his body drawn tight with anticipation. The air between them crackled, charged and electric. His stillness only made the moment heavier. A slow smirk curled at Lila's lips. She wanted to take her time to watch him fall apart, inch by inch, second by second. She leaned in her breath, teasing the space between them. The heat curling between their bodies. Mason's head tilted back. A sharp inhale, breaking the silence. Lila let every reaction guide her, savouring the way his breath quickened, the way his muscles tensed beneath her touch. His breath turned ragged, his chest rising and falling faster, his fingers curling tighter into the sheets. It was exactly what she wanted, but just as the tension coiled tight between them, she pulled back, savouring the power she held over him. Mason's head snapped up his darkened gaze, locking onto hers, chest, heaving. "Seriously?" Mason's voice was duty-edged with frustration, his hands twitching at his sides as if holding himself back from reaching for her. Lila grinned, dragging her nails lightly over his stomach as she moved closer, savouring the slow, deliberate anticipation hanging in the air. "Payback," she whispered. Mason's hands found her waist the second she settled over him, his grip firm, grounding. His chest rose and fell beneath her, like he was still trying to catch up. Lila braced her hands on his chest, feeling the rapid thrum of his heartbeat beneath her palms. She wanted to feel all of it, the need, the tension, the way his entire body coiled beneath her, waiting for what came next. She pressed closer, slow at first, reveling in the way his breath caught, the way his grip tightened slightly. The firelight flickered, casting shadows across Mason's skin, his eyes never leaving hers as she sank into the moment, completely, utterly lost in it. He followed, meeting her, matching her, letting her take what she needed, what she had come here for. The space between them blurred, fading into pure, breathless anticipation. Nothing but the heat between them, and the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. Just when the moment hung suspended, stretched tight between them, waiting to shatter, a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. "Didn't think you'd start without us." A deep chuckle sounded close behind her. Lila barely had time to react before she felt Ethan Noah, Caleb and Jasper closing in, surrounding her. Heat at her back, hands brushing her arms, fingers tracing slow, deliberate paths. She turned her head slightly, meeting their stares, hungry, expectant. No hesitation, no question of what came next. She wanted them all. Ethan cupped her chin, tilting her face upward. His dark, steady eyes locked onto hers. "Let's see if you can handle this." Lila smirked. Challenge accepted. She sank into the space between them, hands trailing over firm lines, teasing with her touch. A sharp inhale, fingers twitched, jaws tensed. She picked Noah first, leaning in, letting her breath skim against his skin before pressing her lips against him. His fingers tangled in her hair, his stance shifting, breath uneven. Ethan, Caleb, and Jasper waited, watching, anticipating, letting her take control. Caleb's hand brushed against her shoulder, a silent reminder. He was waiting. Then Jasper's followed. Lila moved quickly, teasing, taking her time. Just enough before shifting to Caleb. A sharp groan. A hiss of breath. Fingers flexed, tensed, twitched. She had them all at her mercy. "Pace yourself," Ethan murmured. Lila ignored him, continuing dragging her nails against firm skin, keeping them waiting just long enough to feel it. They surrounded her, overwhelming, consuming, relentless in their desire. There was only one way this could end. Lila barely had time to catch her breath before they were on her hands, guiding, shifting, drawing her in. No hesitation, no break. Jasper reached for her, his grip firm, steady, his eyes dark with expectation. She braced her hands against his chest, feeling the power beneath her fingertips, the tension coiling in his muscles. The moment she settled against him, her breath hitched, the rush, the intensity, the way her body reacted, every inch of her caught in the heat of it. Jasper's fingers tightened at her waist, holding her steady for a moment, grounding her before guiding her into motion. Slow at first, savouring it, then faster. Each movement pulled her deeper, making her crave more. Behind her, Noah pressed closer, his breath warm against her skin, his presence undeniable, a silent invitation for more. The night was far from over. Lila barely had time to recover before she was drawn into Ethan's embrace, his steady hands waiting for her. A new body beneath her, a sharp groan, a hiss of breath. She moved instinctively, adjusting, feeling the anticipation building stronger. Gripping his shoulders, she set the rhythm, her pulse pounding in time with every deep roll of her hips. Ethan wasn't passive. None of them were. Each one took control in their own way. Jasper firm, Noah teasing Ethan, watching as she unravelled beneath him, but they didn't wait. They weren't patient. Caleb's hands threaded through her hair, tilting her head back, drawing her into a deep, lingering kiss. Mason's fingers trailed down her spine, steadying her, keeping her in sync with the moment. Lila was surrounded, completely enveloped, lost in the rhythm, the heat, the pressure mounting with every second. And still they weren't finished with her. Noah's voice, deep and amused, murmured against her ear. "She's still craving more." Lila barely had time to register the words before they pulled her deeper into the moment, heightening the tension, pushing the intensity higher. A sharp gasp. Jasper's hands braced her thighs, steadying her as she surrendered to the sensation, letting it take over. The moment stretched, expanded, tightened around her. She whimpered, fingers gripping nails, pressing into firm skin. Her breath shaking as they surrounded her completely, leaving her lost in the rhythm. They moved together, Ethan keeping her steady, Caleb guiding her forward, every movement in sync. A low groan, Mason's deep murmur against her throat. Lila couldn't think, couldn't breathe, could only move. Take, give, let it consume her. Every inch of her body burned, overloaded, trembling, spiraling higher. They weren't stopping, weren't slowing. Each movement sent her spiraling further, the relentless rhythm, the sensation of being completely, utterly taken by the moment. Jasper's deep chuckle, a teasing pull at her hair. Noah's whisper against her lips. "Still keeping up." Lila barely had time to smirk before she was pulled back into motion, drawn deeper, surrendering completely. The pressure built, coiling, tightening, unstoppable. She was lost, completely consumed. She lost track of time, lost in the moment in the way they moved with her, who was keeping her grounded. Every touch, every sound, every movement blurred together, unstoppable, unrelenting, overwhelming. When the final wave hit, when Lila's body finally shattered, giving into the chaos. It crashed over her, overwhelming and unrelenting, leaving her breathless and completely spent. She collapsed onto the bed, her body still humming, her breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. Heat radiated from her skin, every muscle weak, weightless, completely spent. She barely registered the weight shifting beside her Mason's warm hand, trailing absently along her hip. Ethan's quiet chuckle from somewhere nearby. No words were spoken. None were needed. A night like this doesn't happen every day. But if you were in their place, how would you handle it? Would you take the lead or sit back and enjoy the moment? Drop a comment below. Lila wants to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Until next time, Lila lay there, her chest rising and falling, the remnants of the night pulsing through her veins like a fading echo. The cabin was quiet now, save for the soft crackle of the fire outside and the occasional rustle of sheets as one of the men shifted. Mason's hand lingered on her hip, his touch warm and possessive, while Ethan's chuckle had faded into a comfortable silence. Noah, Caleb, and Jasper were sprawled nearby, their breaths steady, their presence a tangible weight in the room. Lila's mind was a whirlwind caught between satisfaction and a restless hunger she couldn't quite name. She had come here to escape, to lose herself, but what she had found was something else entirely, something wild, untamed, and dangerously addictive. She turned her head, her eyes tracing the outlines of their forms in the dim light. Mason's broad shoulders, Noah's lean frame, Ethan's intense gaze, even in repose. Caleb's quiet strength, Jasper's teasing smirk. Each of them had left a mark on her, not just physically, but in a way that sank deeper, stirring something she hadn't expected. Lila had always been in control, always the one to set the pace, to dictate the terms, but tonight she had surrendered to them, and in doing so she had discovered a part of herself she hadn't known existed. The silence stretched heavy with unspoken questions. What now Lila had orchestrated this night? But she hadn't planned beyond it. She had wanted to feel alive, to drown out the noise of her past, and she had succeeded more than she could have imagined. But as the adrenaline faded, a flicker of doubt crept in. Could she walk away from this? Did she want to? And what did they want? The thought sent a shiver through her, not of fear, but of anticipation. She wasn't ready to let this end. Lila sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around her, her movements deliberate to avoid disturbing the others. Mason stirred his hand, sliding from her hip, but he didn't wake. She glanced at him, then at the others, her mind racing. This wasn't just about one night. She could feel it in the way their eyes had locked onto hers, in the way their touches had lingered, in the way they had moved with her, as if they knew her, understood her, wanted her in a way that went beyond the physical. It was intoxicating. And Lila was no stranger to chasing what felt good. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor, and padded to the window. The fire outside had died down to embers, casting a faint glow over the clearing. The night was still the kind of quiet that felt alive, charged with possibility. Lila leaned against the window frame, her breath fogging the glass, her thoughts spiraling. She had come here to escape a life that felt suffocating, a job that drained her, a relationship that had crumbled under its own weight, expectations she could never meet. But this was freedom. This was power. And she wasn't ready to give it up. A soft creak behind her broke the silence. Lila turned to see Mason standing in the doorway to the bedroom, his silhouette framed by the faint light. His eyes were heavy with sleep, but there was a sharpness to them, a knowing look that sent a pulse of heat through her. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice low, still rough from the night. Lila smiled, tilting her head. "Too much on my mind." She let the sheets slip slightly, just enough to catch his attention, and saw the way his gaze darkened. Mason crossed the room, his steps slow, deliberate, until he was close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. He didn't touch her, not yet, but the air between them crackled with the same tension that had drawn them together hours ago. "Regrets?" Mason asked, his tone careful but curious. Lila laughed softly, shaking her head. "Not a single one?" She reached out her fingers, brushing against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat. Mason's smirk returned, slow and confident. "Not a chance." He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "But I'm wondering what you're thinking about now, because that look in your eyes, it's trouble." Lila's smile widened, her fingers trailing lower, teasing. "Maybe I like trouble." Before Mason could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway. Noah, his lean frame relaxed but his eyes sharp, watching them with a quiet intensity. "Starting without us again?" He teased, his voice light, but laced with something deeper. Lila's heart skipped, her pulse quickening at the sight of him. She glanced between Mason and Noah, the air growing heavier, charged with possibility. "Not starting," Lila said, her voice smooth, deliberate. "Just thinking." Noah raised an eyebrow, stepping closer, his presence adding to the tension. "About what?" Lila let the silence stretch, her gaze flicking between them, her mind racing with ideas, desires, questions. She could feel the weight of their attention, the way they were waiting for her to set the tone, to decide what came next, and she knew exactly what she wanted. "I was thinking," Lila said finally, her voice low, "that one night might not be enough." Mason's eyes darkened, a slow smile curving his lips. Noah's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and intrigue. Before either could respond, Ethan, Caleb and Jasper appeared, drawn by the quiet conversation. They stood in the doorway, their gazes locked on Lila, each one carrying a different energy. Mason's confidence, Noah's playfulness, Ethan's intensity, Caleb's quiet strength, Jasper's teasing edge. Lila felt a surge of power standing there under their scrutiny. The sheet barely covering her, her body still humming from the night before. She had their attention just as she had by the fire, and she wasn't about to let it go. "What do you say?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with challenge. "Are you all in for more?" The silence that followed was electric, each man processing her words, weighing the implications. Ethan was the first to speak, his voice low, measured. "You're serious?" It wasn't a question, but Lila nodded anyway, her smile confident. "Dead serious." Caleb crossed his arms, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burning with interest. "This isn't just a game for you, is it?" Lila shook her head. "It stopped being a game the second you all walked through that door." Jasper let out a low chuckle, stepping closer, his smirk unmistakable. "You're something else, Lila, but you know this could get complicated." Lila tilted her head, her gaze unwavering. I can handle complicated. Can you? Mason laughed. A deep, rich sound that sent a shiver through her. She's got a point, he said, glancing at the others. Question is, are we all on the same page? Noah stepped forward, his eyes locked on Lila's. I'm in, he said simply, his voice firm, no trace of his usual teasing. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his gaze never leaving her. Me too. Caleb was slower to respond, his eyes searching hers, but finally he gave a curt nod. Count me in. Jasper grinned, his eyes gleaming with mischief. You know I'm not saying no to this. Lila felt a rush of exhilaration, her heart pounding as she looked at them. Mason, Noah, Ethan, Caleb, Jasper. This was more than she had planned, more than she had dared to hope for, but it felt right. Like a spark had been lit inside her, burning brighter with every passing second. She had come here to escape, but she had found something else. A connection, a freedom, a power that she wasn't ready to let go. All right, Lila said, her voice steady, commanding. Then we set some rules. Honesty, communication, no holding back. We do this together or not at all. The men exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. Mason stepped closer, his hand finding her waist, his touch grounding her. Together, he said, his voice low. Final. The rest of the night passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and quiet moments of connection. They sat around the cabin's small table, sharing stories, teasing, testing the boundaries of this new dynamic. Lila watched them, her heart swelling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. This was uncharted territory, and she knew there would be challenges, jealousy, misunderstandings. The weight of keeping this secret from the world. But as she looked at Mason's steady gaze, Noah's playful grin, Ethan's intense focus, Caleb's quiet strength, Jasper's teasing smirk, she felt ready to face it all. Over the next few days, Lila settled into a rhythm with them. They spent their days exploring the wilderness, hiking, fishing, sitting by the fire. Each moment laced with a subtle undercurrent of tension, anticipation. At night, they came together, sometimes in pairs, sometimes all at once. Each encounter pushing the boundaries of what Lila thought she was capable of. She revelled in their differences. Mason's commanding presence, Noah's teasing touch, Ethan's intensity, Caleb's quiet control, Jasper's playful edge. Each one brought something unique, and together they were overwhelming, intoxicating. But it wasn't just physical. Lila found herself drawn to their stories, their vulnerabilities. Mason spoke of a life spent running from expectations. Noah of a childhood marked by loss. Ethan of a need for control that had shaped him. Caleb of a quiet strength forged in solitude. Jasper of a restlessness that kept him moving. Lila shared her own truths, her failed relationship, her suffocating job, her need to break free. The more they opened up, the deeper their connection grew, and Lila began to wonder if this was more than just a fling, more than just a moment of escape. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the air cool and crisp, Lila felt a shift. Mason was quieter than usual, his gaze distant. Noah's teasing was subdued, his eyes flickering to her with a question she couldn't quite read. Ethan was tense, his jaw tight, while Caleb watched her with an intensity that made her heart skip. Jasper, usually the lightest of the group, was uncharacteristically serious. Lila knew something was coming, something that would test this fragile dynamic they had built. "Lila," Mason said finally, his voice low, breaking the silence. "We need to talk." Her stomach tightened, but she kept her expression calm, her voice steady. "About what?" Mason glanced at the others, then back at her. "About what this is. About where it's going." Lila felt a flicker of fear, but also excitement. She had known this moment would come, had felt it building in the quiet moments, the lingering glances, the unspoken questions. "I thought we were clear," Lila said, her voice firm but gentle. "We're in this together, no holding back." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes burning into hers. "We are. But it's not just about the nights, Lila. It's about what happens when we leave this place, when we go back to the real world." Lila's breath caught the weight of his words settling over her. She had avoided thinking about the future, about what would happen when her escape ended, when they all returned to their lives. Noah spoke up, his voice softer than usual. "We're not saying we want this to end, but we need to know what you want, because this," he gestured to the group, to the fire, to her, "this is more than we expected." Caleb nodded, his voice quiet but firm. "It's more for me too." Jasper's smirk was gone, his expression serious. "Same here." Lila looked at them, her heart pounding. She had come here to lose herself, to feel alive. But she had found something else. A connection that went beyond the physical. A bond that was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. She thought of her life back home, the monotony, the expectations, the emptiness. And then she thought of this: Mason's strength, Noah's laughter, Ethan's fire, Caleb's calm, Jasper's spark. She didn't want to give it up. "I don't have all the answers," Lila said, finally, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "But I know I don't want this to end. Not yet. Maybe not ever." The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Mason's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "Then we figure it out," he said. "Together." The conversation that followed was raw, honest, messy. They talked about logistics, where they lived, how they could make this work, what it would mean to be together, in a way that defied convention. They talked about feelings, about the risk of jealousy, about the need for trust. Lila admitted her fears, her doubts, her hunger for more. Mason confessed a need to protect Noah, a fear of losing what they had. Ethan, a struggle to let go of control. Caleb, a quiet hope for something lasting. Jasper, a restless desire to keep things alive. They didn't solve everything that night. There were still questions, uncertainties, challenges ahead. But as Lila looked at them, their faces lit by the fire, their hands reaching for hers, she felt a surge of hope. This was uncharted territory, but it was theirs to explore, and she was ready to take the risk. Lila told herself this was just an escape, just a way to feel alive. But now she knew it was more. This was about all of them, about chasing something bold and beautiful and terrifying. Was it something only the fearless would dare to try? Or did some connections belong in the light, where they could grow into something extraordinary? Drop a comment below. Lila wants to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Until next time.